Oh, snap. It's time to yap, and I'm your host, Big C, and welcome to another episode of Just Yapping. This episode is going to take a different approach. This episode is dedicated to all the lives that were lost on 9/11, 2001. That day is super tragic, especially for those that live in New York and Pennsylvania and in Virginia and the Pentagon and Washington, D.C. area. I will never forget that day. And for those who lived it, um, we will never forget. It was a horrific day. Actually, it was a beautiful day to begin with until that happened. There was probably a total of like 3,000 lives lost in total. I think 2,700 or so were lost in the World Trade Center just by itself. Fire department lost 343 firemen. The law enforcement officers, total between the Port Authority and NYPD, I think were 70, 71. I could be wrong. I'm sorry if I am. So I'm just gonna, and in that total that I said, the almost 3,000, they included the hijackers. I don't care about the hijackers. The hijackers are where they're supposed to be, in hell. But for everyone else, those that lived, I'm assuming if you're 35 and older, you were probably at a certain age where you could understand what was going on. And those that are older, obviously, you knew what was going on because it was on the television. So this episode, I'm just going to briefly talk because I know that next month is the 24th year anniversary of 9/11. And, a lot of people who don't understand are like, oh, my God, no, you can't do that because unless you knew about it or unless you lived it or unless you're there, you wouldn't understand. Oh, it's a very, very sensitive topic. The only way we keep those who had perished and their memories alive is talking about it and trying to do the best to heal. A lot of people lost uncles and brothers and sisters and mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers and cousins and first boyfriends, first girlfriends, whomever, bosses, and it was just a tragic day. So I'm just gonna kind of bring you down. I shouldn't say memory lane because it wasn't anything happy, but I'm just gonna try and travel down that road and put you to where I was. And being a volunteer fire department in Westchester County, New York, I'll put you into the mentality of what we did and how they utilized us. So it was obviously it was a really sad day, but it turned out to be a very beautiful day. There was not a cloud in the sky in September. It was absolutely gorgeous. So I worked for a company which helped motorists who were stranded or needed fuel or if they had a flat tire and so on and so forth. That was my job. So I was working on a highway and I would normally listen to a Spanish radio station called El Vacilón de la Mañana, which is those that jokester. It was almost like a Howard Stern type thing. And right. So driving down and I hear someone say, there was a plane that had crashed into the World Trade Center. And the first thing I thought, I'm like, that pilot's going to be fired because it's a beautiful day and any pilot, the Hudson River's right there, dump it in the Hudson. If something goes wrong, at least people can be rescued. So nothing. I didn't dawn. Nothing happened. Me being in the Marine Corps then, I didn't even think about it, right? So I was traveling and then I see a van who had a flat tire. So I pull over, throw my lights on and stuff. And it was 3 gentlemen that had fixed a flat that they had. I came upon the flat, but they were putting the tire. They were already in motion to get it fixed. So I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? Whatever, you guys are good. Or I just need your information. Blase. That I stopped. I contacted the state troopers and let them know the situation and that they were going to be on their way. That it came to the point, I said, hey, where are you guys headed? They're like, oh, we're headed down to Manhattan. And I'm like, all right, well, listen, I don't know if you heard, but a plane had crashed into one of the World Trade Center buildings. And, if you guys are down there, be careful. So they were caught by surprise, just like I was. So they're like, hey, thanks for your help. They kept it going. They moved, right? So at that time, you have to understand, at that time, we had only Nextel. Nextel was just a flip phone. And when you pressed, it was like almost like a walkie-talkie. That was kind of the communication that we have. I mean, we had a phone. You can dial numbers and talk, but we couldn't text. We couldn't, nothing. It was just a bleep, bleep or whatever. So now I'm driving and then I see state police flying down the highway. And I'm like, what the? And the business that I was in, who I worked for, we were in constant contact with the state police. So I didn't say anything. I didn't pick up the phone. Now I see Westchester County Police going toward the airport, like the other way, flying. And I'm like, so finally I pick up and I'm like, state police. I'm like, I see a lot of activity. Can you tell me what's going on? And then the guy, he wasn't rude because he apologized later on. He was like, we can't talk right now. We have something going on. Call someone else. And like hung up. So that job was, timed at a certain time. Now I had my vehicle, my personal vehicle, parked somewhere else. So I'm like, F this. I went all the way down to where my personal vehicle was. And plus, since I was in the fire department, I had a blue light. So I parked my truck and I got in my personal vehicle and I zoomed home. I put the blue light on and there was traffic and I went down the shoulder and whatever. I didn't know what was going on because the communication was everywhere. And then they had talked about smoke in the Pentagon. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Going back and forth. And then I finally realized, I'm like, man, we're kind of like under attack, just like most people did. I zoom home. I turn on the television. And sadly, I saw the first tower go down, right? So right away, I get on the phone. I call my mother. And I tell her, God bless her soul, because she's not here. And not because of 9/11, just later on. So she, I left a message on her phone, on her house phone and nothing. And I called my brother. I let him know. And I couldn't talk to them to find out later that when the first tower fell, that was all communications. We couldn't call. We couldn't do anything. So I kind of like, told my wife, and I called my wife and I like, listen, I love you. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to pack a bag. I'll be home in a few days. If anything, just get money, take the kid and go to Canada, take your passport and just go to Canada. Right. I'll find you. I go to my firehouse and the alarms go off. They needed every available manpower. By then, the second tower had fallen, and the Pentagon had been already hit, and I think the plane in Shanksville had crashed. Not knowing the outcome, we get all hands on from the southern part, besides the paid fire department, because the volunteer fire department and the paid guys would bump heads, right? Like, we're stealing their jobs, so on and so forth. That's a never-ending battle. So all the points south, besides the paid guys, south to the farthest northern part before you even get into like Putnam County and like that area, report to the fire training center. We all went to the fire training center. We didn't know what was going to happen. We just know that we were all told to be stationed. And as they need us, they will utilize us with certain equipment, so on and so forth. So I was already anxious, just like everybody else, to get down there to help. We get a crew. We had a ladder truck and we had a fire engine truck. We zoomed down. We were relocated to the Bronx. We were at 233rd in Bailey. And we were at a firehouse. I mean, there were fire trucks. I was trying to find pictures that I'd taken. There were with a Polaroid, mind you, right? There were fire trucks lined up all up and down Bailey Avenue, 233rd. I mean, it was as far as the eyes can see. New York City, a few of the guys that were coming in because everybody had to been recalled and they didn't know what was going on down in the city. Like as far as the World Trade Center, they had no clue of like if anyone survived or whatever. So guys were just coming in. As people were coming in, they were like, listen, we need you guys to come with us, and we need you guys to come with us, and we need your equipment. Let's hop on and let's go down there. Everyone else stand by, and just in case, a fire or something broke out within the Bronx, we would respond with whoever. They had a guy on call, we would go with this guy, we would go with them, so on and so forth. Now, there's one thing that a lot of people don't know. That day, besides lives being lost, there were things that were changed within the firematic structure of Westchester County and New York City. The fire hydrants, the actual threading on the fire hydrant were not compatible to our hoses or anything. So that meant that if they needed us down at the World Trade Center or anywhere, we couldn't fight fires because we couldn't connect, because our thread was called national standard would not go on properly to their fire hydrants, because their fire hydrants are called New York City core, which were designed just for New York City. We learned that later on. So now I think that I remember my old fire company and others around bought a separate connection just for that. Like if God forbid anything would ever happen in New York City again, where we have to respond, we could at least hook up to New York City's fire hydrants and then hook up to our hose and stuff. I'm not in the fire department anymore, mind you. I got out in 2011. So we were in the Bronx for about 26 hours, 27 hours, maybe more. So they didn't know, now guys were hungry and the power went out. There was no power within, a couple of boroughs. They ended up bringing like so many people from the Red Cross Cantina to come and cook. And it was obviously a nightmare. They ended up rerouting us to the Yonkers Raceway, a huge horse track facility and stuff that was kind of empty, and for the fall and stuff. They put a fire truck, they put everybody there, right? And we were just like, we were just standing around because they really couldn't utilize us, because there was no accountability at the time, for everybody to go down there. And it was already, it was already a horror show down there that, they were trying to find people, survivors and stuff. And it just, they just couldn't account for everyone. So it was really not a good scene. So we ended up, coming back home after a few hours. Now, I was in the Marine Corps then, and I was watching, what I'm going to say is probably, it's going to be a little graphic, but this I'm telling you, so then the experience, right? What I saw, and, I couldn't only imagine what other people saw and what they were going through. I saw on television the sergeant that was in my unit. He was in his Marine, because that weekend was my call for duty to be at the station, like to our station, right? So we were already, I had my uniforms ironed, everything ready to go. So he had called out on television, my Marines from, this unit, that unit, if you're available, come down here. We need help for the bucket brigade, bits and pieces and stuff, and just come down and help. He was coming in from New Jersey. He was on the PATH train. And when it all happened, he was on the train and he couldn't go anywhere. So he just, stayed around and he just helped. I threw my uniform on, my camis, and I had a couple of fire department sweaters in my car. I put it in the car, and I ended up going to New York City. And what I saw is just, these eyes will never forget, because it was just the eerie sounds of metal crashing. And mind you, this was like 4 days after 9/11. And it was just like, convoys of military personnel, and still fire guys going down to, from all over. And it was really, I've never seen steel beams and steel columns and things like that wrapped around other buildings, surrounding buildings. It literally looked like like spaghetti, like confetti just draped over these other buildings. That's how hot it was. I could smell, and I know because I've been around it. I know I could smell like, just, you can smell burning, like whatever material, maybe flesh. I just know that it had to have been. I'm pretty sure that there were pollutants in the air that wasn't good for you, even though I wouldn't say her name because I don't want it to backlash and fire on me. But she was once the governor of New Jersey, and she mentioned that, oh, the air quality is good to go, everybody's safe. But fast forward, there's still people dying from the 9/11 chemicals and stuff that were in the air, unknown chemicals. So my hearts go out to them as well, because, and their families, because they're still suffering after 24 years, and it shouldn't have been. None of this should have happened. So I put on my uniform, I head down there, and lo and behold, it must have been, I know when I was in the Marine Corps, I don't know about every other service branch, how they do things, but I was always taught that when you're in a combat environment, you don't salute an officer, because they can be a target. If somebody's watching and an enemy is watching or something, they can be a target. So there was an Army guy where there was like there was like gates where you can pass. So I was already in my BDUs and stuff, and he kind of like looked at me, and I didn't salute him. So he already had an attitude with me. So I was like, "How you doing, sir?" I was like, "I'm here. I heard my sergeant. We had no phone communication, so he was on television. I saw him. I'm down here because they need guys in the bucket brigade." He's like, "I can't let you in. You have to be part of a militia." I'm like, "What? This is my militia. I'm a United States Marine." He's like, "No, you have to be part of the New York State militia," which I didn't know later in life, that while I was at boot camp, if you lived in New York, you had to sign this paper if you wanted to be a part of the militia. And that happens when something tragic or something happens where the National Guard and everybody is like contingent, everybody is together. They call you, and you're like part of a militia, which they take all the branches together and make one, right? So I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So he kind of like, I can't let you in. I was like, "Okay." So now I go 3 blocks that way, and then I find another gate. And at the gate, there were two guys from NYPD. One that I've met before, and he kind of recognized me, and I'm like, "I know you from." So he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, I want to help in these guys, and he's like, I'll let you in." He's like, "But just be careful going beyond, because I can't follow you, and I don't know what you're gonna do." I was like, "Okay, fine." So now he lets me, and I go down. I get all the way to I don't know but it was an AT&T building next to. I was like a block and a half from World Trade Center 1 or 2, whatever was there. I was like super close. So I was just standing around. I was looking to help. Now I see these Marines in full battle gear, helmets, rifle, everything, just staring at me. And I had like my soft cover on, and I was in I didn't have a vest. I didn't have anything. I was just standing there. And I see them approach me, and I'm like, "Oh crap, here we go." So like, "Hey Marine, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Listen, this is the deal." And I went over the whole spiel again. I was like, "But you can't be here unless you were activated by the militia." And I'm getting hot. I'm like, "Listen, I don't care what militia you guys are talking about. You know that we're Marines, and I don't care about any. I'm part of our militia." And they were like, "I know, but we appreciate you coming down, but you can't do it. You're gonna get in trouble." Blase, right? So now he's like, "You're gonna have to go speak to the man." Fine. I get in a Humvee. They put me in a Humvee, and they send me down to Battery Park, where it was like Central Command. The guy that was at the gate was a guy I went to boot camp with, and we looked at each other, and I'm like, "Holy crap, So now he tells me, I told him exactly what's going on. He's like, come on, I'll bring you into the gate. He brings me to the gate. I stand in front of the man, and he was a major. He was in charge of the whole militia, everything. And I stood in front of him and I explained to him, sir, he's like, you know what? He was like, I love that you're here. That goes to show me that we're together and, America will never fall apart. He's like, this is what I love about my Marines. And he's like, but I can't let you go. He's like, because if I do, I'm going to get in trouble. The only reason is because no one knows you're here, not even your unit. And it's true. No one knew I was there. I just went by with, if I found my sergeant, he would have vouched for me, but I couldn't call, couldn't do anything. The phones were dead. So he's like, I'm really sorry. I can't let you in, fly. So now I took it upon myself to take off my Marine blouse, which is my shirt, my hat, and everything. And in my trunk, I put on fire department gear. I put on fire department gear, not full gear, just, my it's called a job shirt, which has your shield and all that other stuff and your name and fire department stuff, whatever. And I still had my camis, my boots, my bottoms and my boots. So now, who do I see? I see the lieutenant that I didn't salute from down yonder. He saw me and he jumps out of his Humvee. And he's like, what did I tell you? You're not allowed. There was somebody watching me because there was a state trooper and a New York City police officer that were both in my Marine unit where I was. And they were like, stop. We know this guy. He's with us. And the lieutenant was like, he's with you? But he hopped. You were like, no, we'll take care of him from here. We got it. We're the cops. You go about your way. And you can tell he was mad. And I was like, thank you. And now they're telling me, what are you doing here? And I explained to him whatever. Now, the sergeant that I had told you about had photos because when I went back to my unit after a few days, he had to go back to report. And then he went again. He brought guys with him when he went back home to New Jersey. He showed me photos that he wasn't supposed to take, but he showed me photos because he wanted to show people how horrible this situation was, because people only knew what they saw from the television. They didn't know firsthand what was going on. He had taken a photo of a human foot that was literally like melted on a chair, and it was like, you don't know who that belongs to, right? Just it must have been a face that was on the concrete that looked like it just looked like just paper and skin. That's what it looked like. I'm assuming from someone who must have jumped from the building. It was really just to listen, just to see that alone was heart-wrenching, and it was very sad, obviously, and I'll never get that out of my head, right? But for those who were there all day, every day, nonstop for months at a time, and thought it was going to be a rescue effort, but then it became a recovery effort. That's something that's a hard pill to swallow. So now we fast forward to 24 years later. Will people forget? I hope not. Do they tend to? Absolutely. But it's something that I, for one, will never forget. And it just changed how America was, how we structure our everyday lives. That was probably the first time in a long time, obviously in 24 years, that at least for once, there was nothing political. There was no hatred. There was nothing, just sorrow, but people were there to cheer the workers on, to cheer the fire department on, to cheer the police department on. And it was just like New York City at its best. That when that goes to show you the adversity, right? When you fall and the pieces are spread literally all over the place, how do you come back from that? That goes to show you that New York City, the people of New York City cared that day. And it lasted a few days, and then after that everybody went back to their normal activities. But it was something to, I pray that nothing like that happens here again, like here in the US, anywhere around the world, because it was planned, it was executed, and it was horrific. Probably the worst thing I've ever experienced. And again, I know there are people out there who have experienced being there and experienced the worst. So as far as, where do we go from here? It's hard to tell, because you can see when this time comes up in September, everything starts getting like, oh my God, is it going to happen again? Are they planning on doing it on an anniversary? Are they going to be here because, one president is, going to be down there or whatever? It's just like, you can't live in fear, but you at least have to sit at the edge of your seat just in case, because you never know. They're not going to tell you. They're just going to go ahead and plan and do it, right? Yes, there are going to be videos and there's going to be replays during the September 11th week and stuff. I mean, I look at it because it's something that you shouldn't forget. Again, if you were around that time. And it educates the young ones to say, hey, this happened. We can't let it happen again. Like I showed my little guy and he couldn't believe his eyes. He was like, wait, is this AI? And I'm like, no, that really happened. Daddy was there and that really happened. It's crazy. I have high school friend that lost his life as a fireman that day. My cousin lost his first girlfriend. I know people that lost brothers and sisters, and I know people lost parents. It's horrible. It's a horrible topic. It's a sad event. And it's just, just pray that nothing like this ever happens again. That's why we got to keep thanking those military personnel and firemen and policemen and those that are out there every single day, risking their lives literally to protect our freedom and to protect us from everyone who's trying to do harm to us. So, again, this is dedicated to those lives that were lost on September the 11th, 2001. I will never forget. I hope you will never forget. And let's try to be humble. Let's be for one another. All right. So until the next episode, I'm Big C. May God bless America. Peace.